Okay, welcome to What Today, and this is Series 15, new series, and this is number 1. Here we go. And today we're looking at Genesis 25 from about verses 19, and it's about the children of Isaac, Jacob and Esau. This is the genealogy. This is starting from verse 19. The genealogy of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah as wife, the daughter of Bethuel the Syrian of Pad Aram, the sister of Laban the Syrian. Now, Isaac pleaded with the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his plea, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. But the children struggled together within her. And she said, "If all is well, why am I like this?" So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, 2 peoples shall be separated from your body. One people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger." Okay, here's a couple of things here. Now, Isaac pleaded with the Lord for his wife. Okay, his dad had been through this, and now he's into it, because she was barren, couldn't have kids. Even the son of promise did not come into the promise so easily, I suppose, is one way you could put it. It only came through waiting and through prayer. Now, that's a consistent thing that's expected right the way through the Old Testament and on into the New Testament and into our lives. We can trust that the prayers of a husband for his wife have a special effectiveness. The Lord granted his plea, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. So the prayer was answered. So the concept of prayer passed down from Abraham to Isaac obviously has not just validity in the fact of doing it, but it actually it still works. But some 20 years after Isaac and Rebekah are first married, their faith and their persistence in prayer was tested and invited to grow through all of those years. As well, these were the only children born to Isaac and Rebekah. Okay. Also, she went to inquire of the Lord. The struggle that seemed to take place in Rebekah's womb made her seek God. As she sought the Lord, as she said, "Okay, what's going on?" she spoke in a way that was inquiring, and the Lord spoke back to her regarding the number of children, their gender, and the destiny of those sons in her womb. It is good to desire that the Lord would speak to us. Now, we need to remember that, but we must realize that we do not hear perfectly from God. We can become far too confident in our ability to understand and to hear from the Lord and forget that it is easy for us to stop listening when God wants to keep speaking. We may add to what the Lord is saying sometimes, or hear it clearly but misunderstand the timing or the application of what he says to us. In connection with God's eternal word, as was in the case with Rebekah here, God gave a unique gift to Rebekah to perfectly listen to what was going on. A gift given only in this particular connection with the Lord. There's 2 nations, in other words, 2 kids. So that's something we've got to take notice of, that she's having twins. And what God says is simple. Rebekah would give birth to twins. The twins would be each father nations. One shall be greater than the other, and the younger will be greater than the older. Jewish legends will tell you, and then this is quite funny when I was reading this, that Jacob and Esau tried to kill each other in the womb. Now, we don't know where they get that from. And also, every time that Rebekah would go near an idol, Esau would get excited and jump. And when she would go near a place of worship to the Lord, Jacob would get excited. I have no idea where they get that from. Of course, these have got to be regarded as nothing more than legends. The older shall serve the younger. In this case, God chose to go against the accepted pattern of the younger serving the older, as is the ancient tradition. In Romans 9 and verse 10 to 13, the Apostle Paul used this choice of Jacob to carry on the covenant over Esau before their birth as an illustration of God's amazing sovereign choice. God's choice of Isaac instead of Ishmael seems to be logical to us. Remember those stories? We had them a couple of weeks ago. Yet his choice between Jacob and Esau regarding which one would be the heir to God's covenant of salvation is just as valid because it's God's choice. But in some ways, it doesn't make as much sense to us. Paul wrote that God's choice was not based on performance of Jacob or Esau. Absolutely, we get that. The choice was made when they were not yet born, nor having done any good or evil. You see, God knows the whole situation. But God announced these intentions to Rebekah before the children were born, that the older shall serve the younger. And he repeated this statement long after Jacob and Esau had passed from the earth. It says in the New Testament, Jacob I have loved, but Esau I've hated. Well, some object to the actual terminology there. And some object to the fairness of God making such a choice before Jacob and Esau were even born. It's a bit weird. Did God actually hate Esau in the sense of cursing him or to a doomed life in this world or in the next? All told, Esau became a very blessed man, financially particularly, in terms of wealth. And in some ways, he was more well-adjusted than Jacob. Yet in regard to the inheritance of the covenant, it could be rightly said that God chose Jacob over Esau. Why? Can I just say, good question. A woman once said to the old preacher Spurgeon, I cannot understand why God should say he hated Esau. Spurgeon replied, it's not my difficulty, madam. My trouble is to understand how God could love Jacob. Is it that we ask the wrong question? Is it backwards in the way that we think? Perhaps it is. And we need to keep some of that in mind as we read some of the Old Testament stories. When we get onto verses 24 to 26, we read of the birth of Jacob and Esau. So when her days were fulfilled for her to give birth, indeed, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red. He was like a hairy garment all over, and they called his name Esau. Afterwards, his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. Now, I'm sorry, I'm 63, and I really don't want any more kids just at this stage. But when you think about it, even the age is part of God's plan. And indeed, there were twins in her womb. The truth of the unseen promise was fulfilled by something they could see. Now, they didn't have machines and things like that to test how many kids are in the tummy and all that kind of stuff in those days. The fact that God said that there were twins and the fact that it happened was amazing. God proved his word to Rebekah. The first came out red. Now, the circumstances surrounding each child were responsible for their names. Esau referred to the hairiness and the hair colour of the first child born. Jacob referred to the way that the second born was holding onto the heel. The idea of holding onto the heel is the concept of a heel catcher. And in those days, it meant someone who was a trickster or a con man or a scoundrel. It's not a compliment, okay? Jacob wasn't a compliment. But they have different characters. It says in verse 27, so the boys grew, and Esau was a skillful hunter and the man of the field, but Jacob was a mild man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. It says Esau was a skilled hunter, the man of being outdoors, but Jacob was a mild guy. Like so many other siblings, in any family, Jacob and Esau were very different from each other. In their personalities, in their tastes, and sometimes each parent had a favourite child. Jacob, it says, was a mild kind of guy. The Hebrew word for mild has the idea of wholeness. Instead of someone weak or effeminate, it says someone who has a completeness about them. The Hebrew word tam, or mild, is used in Job. And it says, then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears the Lord and shuns evil. The word is in there. The same word is in there. It's just translated in our Bibles to be a little bit different. You see, these two men were very different. And the next couple of weeks, as we share with you, are going to take us on their journey. And with them, we go on a journey with them, and we get to evaluate what we can take away from their lives. Bless you.